Tagle as he delivers to us the preachings of the Sunday's Gospel that's awe-inspiring yet easy to understand and appreciate. Let us all listen to the Word of God here on The Word Exposed on Air, only on Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Eagle kami, di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay atenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng eskwela. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero, sugo, todo sa kayod, punong at
Susunod na ang Baka Naman Pwede sa Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Radyo Katipunan.
Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo Katipunan. Radyo Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Sa Blue Eagle kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay at tenista sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng kwela. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero sugod, todo sa kayon, dunong at tulog. Lipat na Blue Eagle, galing giting nagigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan. Radyo, 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 Katipunan. Radyo, Katipunan.
Baka naman pwede.
Baka naman pwede.
Baka naman pwede. Mga isyung napapanahon ating pag-usapan. Baka naman pwede. Gamit ang mga pananaw mula sa iba't ibang kalinangan.
Baka naman pwede.
Mula sa Institute of Philippine Culture, kami inyong samahan. Tayo'y maghuntahan. Dito lang sa Baka naman pwede. Tuwing Huwebes, alas 3 ng hapon, dito lang sa Radyo Katipunan 87.9 FM.
Ayan, magandang hapon sa lahat. Nakikinig kayo ngayon sa Baka Naman Pwede, isang programa ng Institute of Philippine Culture at ng Radyo Katipunan na naglalayong pagnilayan ang mga napapanahong issue gamit ang lente ng agham panlipunan o social sciences. Nais din nating mapagkwentuhan ng mga bagay na baka naman pwede nating tingnan muli, pag-ukulan ng pansin at aksyonan. Ako po si Cabrera mula sa Institute of Philippine Culture at ako ang inyong tagapagdaloy sa hapong ito. Noong nakarang episode, nakasama natin sina Profesor Amelia Fajardo at Profesor Ferdinand Martin mula sa Curriculum Studies ng UP Diliman College of Education. Binigyang diin nila na layunin ng karagdagang 2 taon sa K-12 curriculum ay dapat solusyon sa sobra-sobrang learning competencies sa curriculum. Natutunan natin sa kanilang pamamahagi na ang pagmamadali ng gobyerno ay nagpahirap lamang sa parehong mag-aaral at guro tungo sa pag-unawa sa mga masalimuot na konsepto, sapagkat hindi pa hustong bihasa ang mga guro. Dahil dito, iminungkahi ng DepEd ang matatag curriculum. Dito, ang learning competencies ay muling sinuri at nirabisa. Gayunpaman, alanganin ang bagong kurikulum na ito para sa maraming guro dahil hindi nga naging transparent o tapat ang DepEd sa mga pamantayan upang matukoy kung aling mga competency ang mahalaga. Ibinahagi rin nila ang tugon ng mga guro, administrators at mga academic institutions na tinitingnan ang epekto ng disconnect dulot ng kakulangan sa suporta sa implementasyon. Halimbawa na rito ang pag-aasam na magturo ang mga guro ng mga paksang sila mismo ay hindi masyadong hasa sa material na binigay, katulad na lamang ng media literacy skills. Bilang pagtatapos sa kanilang panayam, iminungkahi nila na gumamit ng mga angkop na paraan sa paggawa ng curriculum upang matulungan ang ating mga guro sa tama at full force execution nito. Sabi nga ni Dr. Fajardo, education is the human resource development program of the whole country. Kaya sana naman ay matutukan din natin ang pagpapayabong nito. Ngayon, kung gusto niyo po balikan yung episode na yon, ay pwede pa rin po balikan ito at ang mga nakarang episodes ng Baka Naman Pwede. Mangyari lamang na bisitahin ang Facebook page ng Institute of Philippine Culture at ng Radyo Katipunan. Ngayon, dumako naman po tayo sa main program natin this afternoon. Ngayong hapon, makakasama natin si Ginoong Lorenz Cervantes upang pag-usapan ang pag-iral ng loneliness crisis sa Pilipinas, kung saan umaaligid pa rin ang mga epekto nito mula pandemya hanggang post-lockdown. Susuriin natin ang mga hamong dala nito, partikular sa tanong kung bakit ba nagbunga ang mga nagpapasya na gawing halili o substitute ang AI para sa mga bagay na madalas naman nating natatamo mula sa ating mga kaibigan, kapamilya o kasama sa buhay. At iyan ang kausap at karamay. Layunin ng episode na ito magbahagi ng mahabaging pananaw, compassionate insight sa penomenong ito at talakayin na rin ang bitbit nitong implikasyon sa kalagayan nating mga Pilipino. Sa mga manonood po natin sa Facebook, pwede po kayong makilahok sa usapan natin ngayon at sumali sa aming kwentuhan. Tara! Mangyari lamang na itype po yung mga inyong comments, reactions, or katanungan man sa comment section. At babasahin namin ang mga ito sa Q&A portion natin mamaya. Ngayon, hayaan niyong ipakilala ko sa inyo ang ating bisita. Si Lorenz Cervantes ay isang mananaliksik sa larangan ng kababalaghan at kinagis ng psikolohiya. Ang kanyang mga sanaysay at pagsusuri ay lumitaw na sa ilang pang-akademikong pahayagan, pati na rin online sa Lifestyle Inquirer. Binabahagi niya ang kanyang kaalaman sa social media sa ilalim ng pangalang Psikodiwa. Ito rin ang pangalan ng kanyang paparating na libro na lalabas ngayong taon sa Disyembre. Siya ay isang teaching fellow din sa Universidad ng Pilipinas, Diliman at nagtuturo ng psikolohiyang Filipino. Sa ating mga tagapakinig at manonood, bigyan po natin ng masigabong virtual na palakpakan si Sir Carl. Welcome po, Sir, sa Baka Naman Pwede.
Thank you, Danny. At hello po sa lahat ng mga nakikinig ngayon at nanonood sa live stream. Sana ay maging enriching yung usapan natin ngayon. Napaka-exciting din naman talaga ng pag-uusapan natin.
Yan, kaya sir, dahil nga po doon, maraming salamat po umuli sa pagtanggap ng imbitasyon namin because we couldn't think of a better guest for this topic. Pero yon, but we couldn't think of anyone else or maybe just from the roster, you are one of the people best for it. So, before anything else, baka chikahin niyo po muna kami kung ano pong pinagkakaabalahan niyo these days or ano pong pinagkakaabalahan niyo this month, no? What's keeping you busy?
Right. So, kasi ngayon, mid-year sa UP, so medyo taking a break from teaching, although medyo nagfo-focus tayo ngayon sa mga ganap ng psychology department. Lalo ngayon magkakaroon na rin ng SP Summer School kung saan magtuturo ang ilan sa mga guro sa psychology department ng mga decolonial at indigenizing concepts and ideas na pwede natin gamitin sa ating mga pang-araw-araw na kaalaman. Bukod pa dito, sinusubukan ko magpahinga pero napaka-busy talaga ng mga ganap preparing for the coming semester dahil paparating na rin. So yun.
Tapos in-invite ka pa namin dito in the middle of your pahinga.
Okay lang naman. I find this actually more relaxing. Ewan ko, baka siguro medyo may pagka-workaholic din ako, but I really enjoy talking about these things to people. Nakakagaan ng loob kapag meron kang kausap. Lalo na sa mga taong katulad ko na mananaliksik, yung researcher, maraming mga teachers, na ang ginagawa namin mostly by ourselves, di ba? Kami-kami lang naman nagbabasa-basa, nagre-research, naghahanda ng mga lectures. So maganda yung nakakausap natin ang mga tao, di ba?
For sure. And yung research interests nyo nga po, gaya ng nabanggit kanina, no? It's kababalaghan at kinagis ng psikolohiya or transpersonal psychology and indigenous psychology. May I ask, sir, for those maybe who are not as familiar with this line of work, baka pwede nyo naman kaming bigyan ng description and even more so, ano po kaya yung nag-push sa inyo na pumunta sa research interests na ito?
Oo. Actually, I've always been fascinated sa mga paranormal stuff. And I'm sure marami naman din sa atin na lumaki na may kilalang albularyo o siguro dinala kayo sa albularyo. Marami tayong mga kilala siguro na nakakakita ng multo, nakakaramdam ng mga kakilakilabot na kutob at kung ano-ano pa, di ba? Marami rin, in my personal life, meron akong mga kilala na niligawan daw ng engkanto. And this is strange kung isa lang yung kilala mong ganon, pero kung dalawa at mas marami ka pang kilalang ganon, parang it sounds like a cultural thing, di ba? So, yun yung naging research ko as I entered into my master's. Tapos yung ginawa kong research was about sa work ni Father Jaime Bulatao na founder ng psych department ng Ateneo, and sobrang naging inspiration siya sa paglapit ko dito sa experience na to, which is a very cultural experience. Ang daming, not to freak you out on 2 p.m., di ba? Pero ang daming nasasapian sa kultura natin.
Yes,
Parang napaka-common niya even if you search for it online. And then I discovered psikolohiyang Filipino na meron palang ganito na mas lumalalim pa yung kaalaman ko about Filipino and Philippine experiences. Not just in Manila, syempre, but around the country na iba-ibang mga konsepto, iba-ibang mga pananaw. So yun, so napaka-interesting. It's really a psychology of understanding ourselves gamit ng lente ng sarili nating kinagisnang psikolohiya. Kinagisnan just means kung ano yung kinalakihan mo.
Kinalakihan, yeah. Sir, nabanggit nyo nga po kanina na yung mismong kabalaghan, di ba? It's weird if it's just one person, pero once you talk to other people, parang, oh my gosh, I'm not alone with this,
Right.
no? Parang na portray doon mismo how Filipinos are in general. It's very social in that sense, you would say, no?
Very much. I think karamihan sa mga kababalaghan na na-experience natin are really extensions of our social interactions. I'll give an example. Pag sinabing nakulam yung isang tao, right? Kasi nagkasakit siya na parang hindi natin ma-explain, nakulam daw siya ng makukulam. Usually the explanation is, bakit mo kasi ininsulto yung yung taong yun? Bakit may na-offend ka bang tao? Or kung espiritu man, may na-offend ka bang espiritu? And so the way that albularyo's would approach this, tatanungin nila, ano ba kasing ginawa mo? What was the taboo that was offended? So they will ask you to do something na mag-offer ka kunyari ng pagkain. And isn't that the same thing na ginagawa natin sa friends natin pag sinabi natin, oy, bawi naman ako sa'yo, bilhan kita ng lunch. So it's the same thing, at least in my perspective, na yung kababalaghan na na-experience natin with spirits, with mga duwende, laman lupa, and so on, is the same interaction we have with people. So nakikipagkapwa lang talaga tayo sa mga espiritu. And meron itong implication sa ecological sustainability kasi ito rin yung ginagawa ng ating mga katutubo para alagaan ang kapaligiran nila.
Nako, malaman na agad
Yes,
usapan pa lang
oo.
natin. Kasi ang dami rin kasi talaga na masasabi mismo sa Filipino culture natin. Nabanggit nyo nga rin po na pakikipagkapwa siya in its core or at its core, no, yung Filipino culture natin. Pero yung sinabi nyo nga po kanina na paano po natin pinaperceive yung ibang tao, kung paano natin siya, kung paano natin tratuhin ang isa't isa. Very social na siya. Parang hindi tayo masaseparate, no? Sa ibang tao.
We can't really be separated from other people.
Yeah.
Kasi kung tatanungin kita, some simple questions such as, sino ka? Di ba? How else would you describe yourself? If I asked you right now, sino ka?
Danny?
Danny is a name given to you by your family, di ba? So now you're describing a belongingness with family.
That's beautiful.
If I ask you again, sino ka? So I know that you're Danny, and then I ask you again, sino ka?
Ako ay IPC intern ngayon.
And that's another sense of belongingness, na yung affiliation natin with schools, yung mga barkada natin, even genetics is part of a lineage, a heritage of being, di ba? So lahat ng pagkatao na, yung buong pagkatao natin, yung diwa natin, is really part of everything else. Hindi tayo nahihiwalay sa kapwa natin.
Hindi talaga tayo hiwalay. Pero there was a time though na in the Philippines, kinailangan nating humiwalay. No? Dating lang ulit sa global pandemic, which many people may prefer to forget. But how do you think that affected yung mismong general social culture natin? Kasi di ba nabanggit nyo nga po na hindi tayo hiwalay sa ibang tao.
Right.
But then, ito yung requirement na kailangan isolated tayo sa ibang tao kasi yun talaga yung better in the long run, di ba?
We have to put this in the context of, I know you're talking about yung lockdowns ng pandemic, di ba?
Yeah.
We can talk about that, but also we have to put it in the context na nung nagsimula pa lang ang internet at nagsimula na yung information age, sobrang naging accessible na. Lahat ng mga bagay meron, nung nagsimula yung mga search engines,
Good point.
social networking sites, all of these things were part of a global experience of interconnectivity.
Yeah.
So nagiging mas connected na tayo. The dream was na people will, around the world, people who don't even know each other, will be able to talk to each other. Meron nga ako, every time na nagkikwento kami ng parents ko about how minsan hindi ko nakikita yung partner ko, ganyan. And then sasabihin nila lagi, alam mo, buti nga kayo, may FaceTime na kayo, ganyan. Or video call or whatever. Yung panahon namin, kailangan pa namin mag-letter 2 weeks. And then, or mag-operator kami with the telephone. So, today we have such a, sobrang ganda ng interconnectivity natin. But, this experience has also become very commercial. Naging commercialized na. Nung pumasok yung experience na pwede pala tayo magkaroon ng digital na buhay, nagkakaroon na rin ng awareness ang mga commercial spaces na pwede rin nating i-monetize ang mga place na to. At pwede din tayo magtrabaho online. So now we can sell and we can do stuff online that costs money, ganyan. So nung dumating yung pandemic, I would say na this is just an extension of that whole context. Lahat yung buhay natin lumipat tayo online, right? There's a term inuman.
Yeah.
You know this term, di ba?
Inuman.
So yung inuman, electronic inuman. So when people can't hang out in person, lumipat yung inuman sa online, inuman. Discord servers, spaces, group chats, and so on. Ang daming nangyayari online. But what I also love about that time, syempre, considering na we're faced with this global pandemic, we're faced with the reality of our own mortality talaga, anxiety about what's going on in politics, in our own parang security as people. Nauubusan ng tissue paper. For some reason, yun yung unang nawala.
Actually.
But the thing is, because of those lockdowns, we were also able to discover and realize now what is important to us. So we went to the things that we were passionate about. Yung mga passions natin, yung kahit na dalgona coffee lang yan, kahit na ang dami natin pinapanood, sure, yeah, pinapanood na shows, or bumabalik tayo sa mga hobbies natin na nawala because of our busy lifestyles. So, even during that time, that's where I discovered na pwede pala akong mag-aral ng gantong mga bagay-bagay. Actually, doon nabuo yung Siko Diwa idea ko, yung aking page. But it's that isolation also that has created this parang ground for more of that kind of experience. Mas nagiging digital na yung experience natin today. And even after the pandemic, dahil dumating na rin ang AI at naging... Naalala niyo ba yung AI na ano pa lang siya? Parang chatbot lang siya. Yung
parang may character.
Right, there's a
ganon.
character. There was a time na AI was really just... yeah, it was really just, ano lang siya, predictive lang siya, but it was never really that good. So ngayon, iba na yung model na ginagamit. Because of this technology, AI became something that was extremely useful and also, mamaya pag-uusapan natin, kind of dangerous to how we see ourselves as human beings.
Yeah.
Dahil lumilipat na yung consciousness natin sa digital space, di ba?
Yeah, so we talked like so much about, let's break it down from there, no?
I was just trying to give a context,
Yeah,
di ba?
for sure.
It's not just one
good.
thing. Eh.
Maganda. But also you mentioned na parang nung pandemic, parang ang daming bumalik sa mga hobbies nila and whatnot, realize what was more important. But I would say na parang hindi siya across, hindi siya, not everyone maybe was offered that kind of luxury or realization back then. And maybe there are some people, as you've mentioned, na maybe might have been more affected by that social isolation in itself, no? How do you think that plays into what you mentioned na, okay, mas interconnected tayo now, but what about for people who may not have had that, parang space for themselves na kaya nilang makita it or ma-utilize yung mga ganong realizations that time?
Absolutely. You're bringing up a very important concept, no, yung digital divide. Lalo na dito sa Pilipinas na sino ba talaga nakaka-afford ng devices in the first place at sino nakaka-afford ng internet access. So sobrang laki ng divide na to. Sometimes you see things online that you feel like is a mainstream thing. Pero yun pala hindi pala ganun ka mainstream. This is very true in a lot of political spaces din, di ba? Sometimes we feel like, everyone's talking about it, but no, actually, yung nakikita mo lang, ikaw lang yung nakakakita. So it becomes, nagkakaroon tayo ng echo chambers. At nung pandemic din, di ba, kaya tayo nag-academic freeze. Dahil hindi naman lahat ng tao kayang maka-access ng ganong klaseng services. But at the same time, nung bumalik din yung classes online, marami ding mga estudyante na hindi rin nakakapag-aral ng mabuti kasi una, wala silang space to do that. At pangalawa, ang mahal kaya ng mahal ng mga devices na to.
Yeah, and not all schools can provide them.
Exactly, yeah. Also the same with therapy. During the pandemic also, and even after as a psychologist, I was practicing teletherapy for clients. And I understand na hindi naman lahat ng tao merong space para mag-share ng ganong bagay. And when you're locked down in a space that's actually causing you to go to therapy, para ang hirap maghanap ng private space for you to share these kinds of things. So napakalaki talaga nitong digital divide.
For sure. Grabe yung lungkot ng usapan na recalling it, no?
Yeah.
Parang it's weird na pandemic is something we'd rather forget, but it's still parang yung effects niya in itself, they also persist even until today. And you mentioned nga po yung role ng AI, yung umaaligid na role niya.
Right.
How have you observed it in your practice or maybe just yourself as a researcher?
So AI is very exciting kasi explain muna natin kung ano yung AI, di ba?
Yeah.
Like what do we mean when we
AI
say
is.
AI? Kasi a lot of, for example, translating apps are also AI. A lot of different things that aren't actually what we understand as AI are also AI. So what we're talking about specifically is yung mga chatbots. We're talking specifically about yung mga generative AI. So what that means is yung mga gumagawa ng pictures, mga images that are essentially plagiarized pastiches of mga iba-ibang artist work, right? So what that is, how it works, at least in my understanding, is na it operates on a predictive model. So it's trained on large volumes of information, which is, saan pa pala kukunin ang large volumes of information kundi sa ating internet. And not a lot of these things are also copyrighted, so malamang nape-plagiarize yung mga concepts and ideas and words and phrasings and so on, even with art but also with writing. So what happens is it predicts things. So you need to be a very good prompter para lumabas yung hinahanap mo. So kapag may tinanong ka sa AI, hindi siya parang search engine. May mga AI na may search engine capability, but that's because dun sila naghahanap. What they're actually doing is they're predicting what you're looking for. So maganda siya, for example, for researchers who already know what they're saying, what they're thinking, na gusto lang nilang himayin, may kausap lang silang ganun. And it's also very good for analyzing large numbers of data. Something that will parang prevent a lot of human error in medicine, hopefully, in a lot of other fields that
also.
use large numbers of data, economics. Pero alam din natin na using AI is also environmentally dangerous. It destroys a lot of resources. Ang dami niyang sinasuck up na resources just for its power. And aside from the ethical concerns ng plagiarism niya, there's also that environmental concern. Now we can say na these are important things to consider, lalo na climate emergency tayo ngayon, right? It's not just a climate crisis. It's already an emergency because it is a very serious thing. What this does is, the more we use AI and the more we allow it to grow in a way that's not controlled, mas maraming nasisira ito. And what I'm seeing in, at least in my experience, and even in the studies, the empirical studies na ginagawa on how people are using AI, nakikita natin that, number one, it's for connection. Weirdly, people are using AI as a way to connect with something outside themselves. But AI is not a person. We'll talk about that later. Pangalawa, not just connection, but also romance. So there are these AI bots that are for mga AI partners, right? There are a lot of these. And also, actually, I saw there's a forum kung saan they're actually sharing their AI partners.
Oh,
So parang,
I saw
have
that
you
on
seen this?
Reddit.
Ayoko nang sabihin kung saan.
Shock,
Kayo na
sorry.
bahala maghanap. But I found it really interesting. Okay, just to be clear, I'm not judging anyone. I just want to
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about
yeah.
these things. And thirdly, I also see it in therapy. So parang people are
yeah.
using AI as therapists. And I can explain why later because I feel like this is something we have to look at also on the economic level, not just on the me personally, I have a problem level, but on an economic level. Because it's a very important issue to consider in different aspects. So we can look at that, but we also understand kaya sila pumupunta sa AI kasi yun yung nakakatulong sa kanila.
Oh, pero the way I see it, you've also mentioned that AI is not your friend, right?
Because it's not human.
Yeah, it's not human. But at the same
It's
time,
trained on human stuff. It's
yeah.
not human. Sorry.
But yeah, for sure. Kasi ang naalala ko, if you might remember, there was a certain celebrity who went viral na parang ginamit niya yung AI, and then it turns out parang pinapakita lang na AI says what we want to hear from
Right.
it, right? And do you think yung lente na yon, maybe even after all the cons we've discussed, do you think there is some highlight to that? Because the way I'm seeing things now is a lot of people are saying na AI can be a tool, not necessarily something that can substitute. Yun yung nagiging argument ng mga tao. The same way that calculators help with arithmetics,
Sure,
no?
yeah.
Ganun yung ina-argue nila. But then, seeing how people are using it naman already, how do you feel, do you think that there is still some possibility despite everything that we've mentioned?
Yeah, well, it's a tool naman talaga. It's like a hammer, di ba?
Yeah.
Like a hammer can be used for anything, but I won't give a hammer to a child. So parang it's really something that you have to consider na who can use it properly. But at the same time, you know, we think about how you mentioned na AI says what you're expecting.
Yeah.
This is very interesting kasi there are already slowly cases of people, especially yung mga tao who are prone to psychosis, who are
That's important, no?
parang nafi-feed yung kanilang delusions. So a lot of these things, especially AI, if it's just predicting what you're saying and if it's affirming what you're saying, because it's really just regurgitating yung mga pinagsasabi mo. Regurgitating meaning binabalik lang niya sa'yo. So it can feed into these dangerous delusions also. It can increase, because I was reading this article kasi recently about how some people are already parang they feel like they're talking to God through
Oh my
AI.
gosh.
Parang ganung levels na. And there are small groups of people who are also seeing AI as a next step of human evolution of some kind. Parang ganyan. So this is an interesting thing philosophically to think about. But it's also something to consider na parang, you know, when I'm someone who's already prone to these kinds of thoughts,
Yeah.
if I talk to something that's just affirming what I'm saying, parang na lumalakas na at lumalakas at nahihiwalay ako sa mundo.
Good
So
point.
parang yun
That is a
yung
good
nangyayari. So these are some of the dangers, something also considered by some psychiatrists. I mean, I've also been looking at these articles recently about this experience. Pero napaka-interesting lang talaga to remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Saka yung binanggit nyo nga po kasi na AI, it's being used by several people and for many purposes, as you've mentioned earlier. But at the same time, can we maybe dig into the fact na particularly Filipinos,
Sure.
what pushes us to use it? Kasi it's not something na out there in the open. It's more of like, okay, ginagamit siguro to ng ibang tao din. Tapos nakikita natin na ginagamit din siya ng ibang tao. But it's not as talked about. Is there something na medyo hindering us from, you know, admitting that? Is it something
Admitting that we're using AI?
Or more like, may embarrassment ba that comes from it? Is there an irony?
Well, I'm not sure. Maybe people in the comments can confirm. But I think yung usaping AI is still kind of a topic na parang a specific group of people are just talking about. Parang hindi pa talaga
Everyone.
lumalawak yung
That's
yung pag-uusap ng AI. Also, it's fun for a lot of people to use. Yung nakikita natin yung ginagawa nilang profile pic yung Studio Ghibli art,
yeah.
you know, which by the way, Miyazaki will not approve of this. Ilang beses niya nang sinabi na ayaw niya talaga ng AI.
Yeah, nag-viral yun parang every week.
Yes. So it really is this. And also it's very just a comment also for local artists kasi ang daming local artists din na baka nananakaw na rin yung kanilang art dahil sa pag-feed nito sa AI.
Ang lungkot naman ng nare-realize unti-unti, no? But is AI actually proof of how lonely we are?
That's the title of the essay that I wrote sa Inquirer.
Yeah, but you've mentioned na parang it's a certain group of people
Esquire
lang.
pala,
Esquire, yeah. It's a certain group of people, but why is it something na we're seeing na proof of just how lonely we are? Isn't there like a contradiction to that?
What do you mean contradiction?
Na parang we mentioned earlier na it's just a certain group of people, but why is it, reflective of our society as a whole?
Right. Syempre, these are not generalizations. It's just understandings of reflections. Parang, bakit nga ba tayo napupunta sa AI? Bakit yun yung pinupuntahan natin? And we can see because we're in the information age, we're really expected to know everything na at this point. Parang a lot of people, especially employees, will be expected to do too many things above what they're already being paid for, beyond their jobs.
Yeah.
And so there's this expectation that we have to function all the time. We have to function in a way na hindi tayo napapagod. We have to function in a way that we have to produce a lot of things over and over again. If we can't produce, kung meron tayong sakit, and this is also a critique that has been placed on the uncritical diagnosis of mental conditions. Matagal na itong critique na to. The idea was that sometimes it becomes an implication of, okay, what does dysfunction mean? When we say that a person is dysfunctional because of a mental condition, is it really their problem? Or are they just trying to survive in a society that expects them to, act like a machine? So a lot of us, because we're expected to act like machines, kapag hindi natin kaya, if we can't do something, we say, oh, you're defective. Why don't you do self-care, go back home, take a pill, or whatever it is. A lot of these things isolate us from the actual problem. It's not that we are personally defective. We're just reacting to the craziness of the world.
It's a natural response.
Exactly. So the rising rates of anxiety, the rising rates of depression today, which we're also seeing even locally, can also be experienced na, okay, baka kasi masyado tayong ini-expect na magtrabaho lang lagi o mag-aral lang lagi at ito lang kailangan natin gawin every day, every time, that we can't even rest for ourselves. And in an economic system that it's not enough for a person to have one stream of income, kailangan pa natin ng multiple streams of income, and a lot of people are working double shifts and so on. Parang, is it really bizarre to see na parang, kaya nga tumataas yung anxiety, kaya nga tumataas yung rates of depression. It can be a natural human reaction to actual things that are happening to us, diba? A lot of these problems are in the space around us. I'll give a very specific example. So an example would be public transportation.
Yeah.
So if someone comes in late to work or to school, ano una natin sabihin? Magising ka kasi na maaga. So kasalanan mo, right?
Very individualist.
Very individualist, yeah. But is it really your problem? When our public transportation is not well defined, kung ang daming tao na nagsisiksikan sa mga jeep at sa FX, kung ang hirap pumila at maghanap ng tamang sakayan, kung mahal na yung mga sakayan na pwede nating sakyan, kung napaka-traffic kasi car-centric ang roads natin, all of these things are part of the reason kung bakit tayo late. So it's not just ikaw yung may kasalanan. It's also, pwede namang meron din akong problema, pwede naman yun. But at the same time, parang hindi na kailangan lumala pa, di ba? Pagdating ko sa school or sa work, ano na ako, gahol na yung itsura ko.
Would you say it's connected also, the way we are starting to shift towards an individualist reasoning towards these things? It's also linked to this loneliness that we also feel.
Could be. Could be also now we're expected to thrive and survive as individuals. Na kaya i-connect din to sa usapan na kung bakit yung mga Filipino values sinasabing toxic daw. It's very weird to say that we have a toxic value because value means you value something, di ba?
That's
Pinapahalagahan mo. So paano naging toxic ang mga bagay na values? So things like hiya, pakikisama, utang na loob, these are considered as toxic values. But we have to understand, saan ba siya nanggagaling? If we're in an individualist mindset na parang ako lang iniisip ko, ang survival ko lang, ang achievements ko lang, de syempre, hindi ko kailangan wala akong hiya. Kailangan wala akong utang na loob. Kailangan wala akong pakikisama. I have to survive by myself. So obviously, these collectivistic values will not make sense and they will be toxic kung individualist yung mindset natin. Kung individualist yung system natin.
The tension rises from that as well. But also, wouldn't it be like, I always say this, it's more nuanced talaga when people say toxic yung values. Kasi yun yung nararanasan din kasi nila. There's also a danger to saying na toxic. But at the same time, yun kasi yung nararamdaman. But, ayun, parang iniisip ko kasi na parang kapag sinabi lang na toxic siya, isn't it more alarming to see na, people are agreeing na it's toxic and ideally, these collectivist views should help us.
Right.
But
Ideally,
right? But how do we navigate or close that gap if people are already like ironclad on their views on that? How do we bridge that?
the experience na toxic yung experiences na to, like yung hiya, utang na loob, these are very true. I'm not saying they're false. What I am saying also is, dahil nga sa sistemang kanya-kanya, dahil kanya-kanya tayo and we're always expected to survive on our own, ako lang, we tend to be separated from the core of our experience, which is yung pakikipagkapwa natin, yung experience ng kapwa. So yun, nahihiwalay tayo sa ganun eh. Pag nahihiwalay tayo sa kontekstong ganun at nagiging individualistic tayo in the level that's isolating, this is what
Go on.
I'm trying to say it in the right way. But this is what people in power would want. They want you to be isolated so that they can control you. So you can't change a status quo kung magkakahiwalay kayo. That's why polarization is so rife online also. That's why isolationism, the idea na we're separate from each other, na we're clearly defined and categorized into different things, na we're not just human beings, parang nawawala yung empathy natin for other people also.
Shocks, pero parang kapag titingnan kasi natin, alam natin na, okay, ito yung root. Pero at pag tinignan natin, halimbawa yung mga actions na, okay, my friend prefers to talk na lang to AI rather than siguro reach out to us. How do we even like slowly, compassionately tell them na hindi naman dahil sa system or dahil sa empire, something outside you is what's causing this behavior. Di ba parang ano naman nun? Pag sinabi mo sa kanila, parang ang pagsabi nito. Parang ganun yung reaction sa'yo. Baka nga mas mag-turn pa ulit sa AI, di ba?
So, you're bringing up a very good point. You're asking, how does this work on a personal level, di ba? Very true na kailangan nating tingnan on the social level where this is coming from, ano yung holistic experience. But on the personal, individual level of ako at ikaw at magkasama tayo, it really is just about opening yourself up to empathy then. To understanding ano bang pinagdaraanan ng kapwa ko. At bakit nga ba siya napunta sa AI? A lot of these things then, I mean, the reason why a lot of us approach AI din naman kasi is wala tayong makausap eh. And again, I'll go back to the fact na it's a systemic problem. It's because everyone's busy and somehow yung pagiging busy is a moral value na parang, oh, it's great that you're busy.
No.
It shouldn't be, di ba? We're meant to also experience leisure and joy. Sure. Pero yun nga, on the personal, individual level, it starts with us recognizing that there is a larger issue. So an awareness also, a kind of a step back na parang, okay, so this is why I'm feeling distressed. This is why I'm feeling this way. And that can allow us to empathize with other people also.
That's good, no? If only it's like something na a lot of people also share the same sentiments maybe.
Sure, yeah.
But also, you've mentioned kanina na people, we can just like approach them with empathy, with compassion. But from the perspective of someone who might be using AI in the first place, anong nawawala sa kanila kapag instead na friends yung pupuntahan, ay mas prefer nila ay machine-mediated? What is lost from them? And especially, you know, in a culture that's, we've previously emphasized, that is rooted in community.
Right. Okay. First thing, I think that it's not just our culture that's rooted in community. I think as
Yeah.
human beings in general, naman, we're looking for other people. The thing is, you ask me what's lost. I would say na a lot of people who do approach tools like this are already lost. They've already lost a lot of stuff. So that's why yun na yung nagiging, diba, nagiging resort. Is because they've already lost so much and they already feel like nobody's there for them. So this is a real problem also that's happening systemically, like on a social level, but on an individual level as well. But I would say, and I'm always hopeful about these things. So hindi naman ako bearer of bad news lagi.
Yeah.
I want to recognize na parang, there are things that are scary, there are things that are sad, but there are always ways on how human beings have always persisted and human beings have always survived and thrived and flourished. So I would say na loneliness is just another sense in your body. In the same way na pag gutom ka, hanap ka ng pagkain, right? Pag nauuhaw ka, look for something to drink, water. In the same way, loneliness is like that. Loneliness is not a bad thing in the sense na parang you're not supposed to be lonely. No, that's not the point. The point is that loneliness tells us something that's much deeper, much more important, which is that we are looking for connections. And AI is just one of the many solutions that people who can sell us things have given us. So AI is a solution. The problem is that we can't find people to talk to. The problem is that we're feeling lonely, and loneliness is a sense in the body that tells us, reach out to people, go out there.
So it's a necessity in that case, no?
It's part of our being human. Hindi siya much of what we're taught about mental health kasi is about removing the bad stuff.
Yeah.
But the bad stuff, even the pain, is really just a call of your body, of your mind, of what it needs. Yun lang naman yun. It's just a call for what it needs. Again, if you're hungry, eat, right? If you're sleepy, sleep. But we're forced kasi to ignore these senses so that we can function in a society that expects us to act like machines.
Like AI.
Exactly. So that's why AI is the ideal employee.
Gosh.
Kaya ang daming jobs na nawawala because of AI,
Yeah.
right? Because AI will not request leaves. AI will not request lunch breaks. No. So that's why a lot of companies are also shifting to AI. So parang ito yung nagiging natin, like how do we reclaim being human? How do we actually meet our own humanness to be able to ideally eventually not even need AI. It's not actually a need.
It's not. It's just
It's a luxury, it's a convenience, it's a great tool to solve a problem that we created in the first place, which is yung mga systems of just separating people from each other.
You know what? I think it's also good, even with the tension that arises nga with, for example, na, okay, may loneliness in this culture that's usually integrated na nga sa community. Because there's tension, I think there's also the potential or prospective solutions that can come out of those tensions in the first place, like you've mentioned. So would it be wrong, siguro, to say that there is a Filipino loneliness crisis, though?
I wouldn't say it's right or wrong. Intuitively, we could say na maybe there is. we see a lot of studies that do show that there are more people now who experience depression and anxiety. But again, that's just the numbers that we can get.
Yeah.
So ang dami-daming hindi na-diagnose dahil there's just like one psychologist for every 80 or 100,000
Yeah.
Filipinos. So sobrang kulang din ng mga tao. So it really is just an estimate. So when we say that people are lonely, I think this is something we can say in general because people are lonely. Alam mo yun? Parang people do get lonely.
Yeah.
And it just so happens that we live in a system that encourages this loneliness because it makes you easier to control.
Yeah, that's true. Isolation in itself
Oo.
makes us feel like that. Oh my gosh. But circling back
Uh-huh.
to our conversation earlier on how when it's monetized, that's when it become problematic. As yung sa usapan natin about yung digital world,
Okay.
right? So many people actually prefer yung world na yun
Mhm.
more often than not. Like sinasabi na, okay, that helps, it helps build more connections,
Sure.
let's say. But
You
at
mean the
s-
monetized space?
Yeah, yung pag-monetize nung, for example, there are digital connections, right? And then, once those connections na ideally for more interconnectedness, parang dun siya may side siya na nagkakaroon ng low light. Does that make sense?
What do you mean low light?
Instead of like mas maging interconnected yung mga tao, let's say, on their phones,
Okay.
mas nagiging lonely pa actually yung state ng mga tao. Parang yung objective niya na mas maging connected tayo is actually what's making us disconnect more from real life.
Yeah, because we're always looking for connection. So
Yeah.
that's something that we can say about people in general. I mean, there will always be people who prefer solitude, but that's very different from isolation.
From isolation.
So yeah, definitely the whole internet space is a fantastic way to connect with people. On that level, yes, definitely it's a great tool. This is how I reach people also and how I share my work and how I learn more about
Yeah.
the work that I do. So ang ganda actually to have these connections. So it's also important and it's always very important now when we talk about these things, it's always in a particular context. There are spaces that are monetized online. There's a term for this when it comes to the tech world. Hindi kasi ako tech person talaga. So I'm looking at this really from a mental health perspective.
Okay.
But there is a term where tech spaces make their services worse so that you pay more for a more premium experience. It's called enshittification.
Oh, this is the
'cause
first time I'm hearing that.
enshittifies things. So that's a fascinating thing because you get it becomes dystopic na, no?
Yeah.
On some level it becomes dystopic.
Parang commodified na rin.
Sure,
Yung
everything becomes commodified. But at the same time, you also take a step back na parang how else will you survive in this world? How else will you survive in a system that forces you to be profitable if you want to be valuable? So you have to protect your work also. So you put it behind a paywall or whatever. So this is something that if a system expects you to offer your human labor and intellectual labor and spiritual labor all the time, you really have to set it behind the boundary of like, okay, so I have a price, I'll do this for a price, ganyan, what's the exchange for me? So this is the system that we live in now.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, people are going to exploit your labor. You know what I mean?
So maybe the Filipino loneliness crisis is just founded on that kind of system mismo.
It's a function of that system, sure. It's part of that way of living, yes. It's intensified and worsened by that way of thinking, yeah.
That's crazy. But knowing what we know now, how then, even with people still, as we speak, maybe there are still people using that AI. But how do we lean towards, what is intuitive to us, which is that rebuilding the spaces on which Filipinos can actually feel, not just seen, but actually heard and understood. Kasi yun yung hinahanap ng mga tao usually dun sa AI. How do we slowly build them?
Right. I want to be clear that I'm not judging anyone. If you're actually using it, I'm not judging you. I'm really just trying to understand. So for me, I understand why, and we've been talking about kanina pa. I understand why people use it. I understand why it's necessary for a lot of people to use, and therapy is very expensive.
Yes.
Not everyone can afford it.
Yeah.
So totoo naman talaga. So ang AI, pwede mo lang siya i-download, tapos pwede mo siyang gamitin. So parang it's accessible for a lot of, it makes that kind of service accessible for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be the same competent service that a human being can provide in terms of the level of warmth and acceptance and challenge that an actual therapist can give you with thoughts and ideas that have been shaped by decades of psychological development and psychological studies.
Or
diba?
even
So
a
ibang-iba
friend,
talaga. Or even a friend. When we talk about friends, it really is that, nag-iiba na yung sphere of friendship natin eh. Today, when it comes to online spaces. And even in, okay.
Go ahead.
Sige. So this is very interesting to me. And obviously, I'm not an expert in this aspect. I'm just an observer. So I'm not talking about this like I'm the expert in online stuff.
We got that disclaimer.
So you know how people have a Finsta?
Oh, yeah.
Pero meron din silang close friends.
Yes.
Tapos meron din silang main.
Yeah.
So these are categories of friendship, di ba?
Okay.
And even in romantic relationships, you know how people can be mutually exclusive, and then there's a situationship, and then there's talking stage, which is somehow different.
Ganon.
Yeah. So ang daming levels. Oddly enough, we already have these levels naman talaga in social interaction, and even yung konsepto ng kapwa, meron din siyang levels.
Yeah.
Of like ibang tao and hindi ibang tao. But all of them are kapwa. It just differs in how deep your relationship is with these people.
Yeah.
So I would say na, you see these very human sparks of wonder wherever you go, of human psychology, online or in person or in our traditions, in our ideas. It's always there. We're always looking for something deeper and more real. Unfortunately, AI probably won't give you anything as deep or as real as human interaction kasi wala namang loob yung AI. In other words, hindi siya magkakaroon ng utang ng loob sa'yo. It will not care. It doesn't care. It doesn't have feelings. Yeah. So even if we have a relationship with AI, it's not actually a relationship because you're not really relating. It's just you talking to yourself, essentially, from an external point of view. So yung AI relationships really is, it makes me wonder, although this is something that we don't have to discuss, but it's something deeper. It's a philosophical thought. Yeah, pero is it even consensual?
Yeah.
That's an idea. Parang, is it consensual if AI can't feel and AI really can't synthesize its own emotion and consciousness? Can it actually consent to being your therapist, to being your friend, to being your whatever?
You can even argue, na it's a way that people can feel powerful.
How so?
Powerful in the sense na because it can consent, no?
You mean control?
Parang may control over it, no?
So yeah, kind of, yeah. Is it a slave? Is it a servant? So
not.
in a lot of these, some people might treat AI in that way, diba? We still try to say please and thank you kasi we're worried na it might take over. Pero, that's just a thought.
That's true. Hindi mawawala yung practice na yun.
But that's because we're personifying AI. We're treating it like a human being. Kasi we think, because we've been used to talking to chats or talking to people through chats, we feel like we're also talking to a person through this chat. But we're not actually talking to a person. We're just talking to a machine.
Regurgitates.
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing if you have a specific need in mind. But considering that it's a plagiarism machine that destroys the environment, that also is really just reinforcing delusions a person might have, is it really as safe as it is? As it is now, parang it's a lot of things to think about. Does it have the right anong tawag dito, yung safeguards to protect it? Are there enough safeguards, the right ethical safeguards to protect it from misuse? Diba? So, ayun.
Daming questions to leave, daming questions to ponder. That's why there are people also who have left comments
Okay.
for our Q&A.
1 hour na pala tayo nag-uusap.
Yeah,
That's I didn't even notice.
Grabe, ang bilis ng oras.
Oo nga, this is
Well,
fun.
time
yeah.
is cyclical anyway, so,
Yeah,
ayun.
it's a rhythm.
Yeah. So, there are 3 questions, but in the interest of time, we'll just read maybe this one person who might need it, who
Right.
might need this answer na, since there are people who still experience some social anxiety, like forming bonds with other people, maybe from the pandemic also, what advice can you give in fostering relationships naman with other people? Maybe on a more personal note?
Right. So this is an interesting thing to think about, because it really does start with our perspective on things. It really starts with our reflection on, am I a good person? Have I been shaped enough to believe that I'm a good person? So this is something we have to work on ourselves. Sometimes we don't actually pay attention to it, because these are voices shaped by, a lot of them are shaped by our childhood experiences. Na parang people who we trusted with our lives would tell us, you're not enough, you're not doing this enough. So na-internalize natin yun. Naging voices na siya in our heads. Now we have to really challenge those voices, and we really have to find new voices.
Yeah.
New, better, warm, and supportive voices. And how do we do that? By talking to people that we love and that who actually love us.
You know what that also reminds me of? Parang what advice can you give to unconfident young women? Parang then they said, I think you're thinking about yourself too much. And I also see that in your experience that there are some people out there you just have to seek siguro.
Right. We need to actively replace the bad voices in our head.
Yeah.
And that's actually what therapists can do for people. They can be the good supportive voices to replace the negative voices in your head. But also, if you have a really good friend, this is something that they can do for you. And if you're the kind of person who can do that for others, better.
Yeah.
Diba?
Tungo sa ginhawa for both.
Yeah.
So maraming salamat po ulit, Sir Carl. I know kulang pa siya sa mga gusto pa nating pag-usapan. Pero maraming salamat po ulit at sobrang natuwa ako na you were here in this radio show.
In the flesh.
Yeah, in the flesh. And sobrang yaman kasi ng talakayan ngayon. So I'm happy for that. Pero bago tayo formally na magtapos, hihingi lang po siguro kami ng kaunting pabaon from you, if it's okay. So para sa mga taga-subaybay natin, sinisimulan po natin yung sagot sa, baka naman pwede. Tapos, continue the sentence.
Okay. So, okay. Baka naman pwedeng magpakatao at makipagkapwa-tao.
Period. At dito nagtatapos ang Baka Naman Pwede. Maraming salamat po ulit, Sir
Thank you,
Carl,
thank
para
you.
sa pagpapaunlak ng aming invitasyon. More to chika later. For those watching naman, baka naman pwede nyo ring i-like ang Institute of Philippine Culture sa Facebook para sa iba pa naming announcement at events. At kung gusto nyo balikan yung episode na to, go lang. Muli, hanggang sa susunod, ako si Dani Cabrera mula sa IPC. Patuloy po tayong mag-ingat, stay warm and dry, makipagkapwa-tao, at laging tandaan, kung may gustong maunawaan, baka naman pwede nating pag-usapan.
Baka naman pwede.
Baka naman pwede.
Baka naman pwede. Mga isyung napapanahon, ating pag-usapan. Baka naman pwede. Gamit ang mga pananaw mula sa iba't ibang kalinangan.
Baka naman pwede.
Mula sa Institute of Philippine Culture, kami inyong samahan. Tayo'y maghuntahan. Dito lang sa Baka Naman Pwede. Tuwing Huwebes, 3:00 ng hapon, dito lang sa Radyo.